The View co-host Sunny Hostin's husband, Emmanuel Hostin, has been accused of federal insurance fraud.
That the Democrat Party lost in 2024 for a lot of reasons, but mostly because they lost hardworking, blue-collar Americans that were once Democrats. I don't think they were able to captivate those.
It all began with a moment that could only be described as the perfect storm of television drama. A live broadcast on The View where political commentator Sunny Hostin decided to step over a line that most would consider uncrossable. What was supposed to be an intense but civil debate on immigration policy spiraled into something far more personal, far more visceral. It wasn't just about politics anymore. No, this time, Sunny Hostin went for the jugular, dragging her co-host, conservative firebrand Tomi Lahren, into a deeply personal attack that left jaws on the floor and social media ablaze.
I'd like to ask you, woman to woman,
All right.
Is it difficult for you to support Trump as a leader when he treats women so poorly, the things that he said about women? Remember that horrible tape, the Access Hollywood tape? I won't even repeat it, it's so gross. And not to mention the things he said about Megyn Kelly and about Alicia Machado, all that stuff against women.
The spark that set this firestorm ablaze? Hostin's decision to dig deep, too deep, into Lahren's ancestry, bringing up details about her great-great-grandparents in a way that was clearly designed to embarrass and discredit her. Your second great-grandmother didn't even speak English after being here for years, Hostin declared with a smugness that made the room feel like it was closing in. The comment was delivered like a dagger, sharp and calculated, aimed squarely at undermining Lahren's staunch advocacy for merit-based immigration policies. It wasn't just a debate tactic, it was personal, and everyone watching could feel it. To her credit, Lahren didn't flinch, not outwardly at least. Sitting there in her signature polished composure, she responded with a calmness that only seemed to amplify the tension in the room. She stated that the immigrants in question were European immigrants in the 1,800s, who came legally, followed the rules, and contributed to the country. She emphasized that merit-based immigration isn't about ancestry, but about skills and contributions, suggesting that Hostin should look into that.
I started out at One America News with an 80-something-year-old male boss who called me a bimbo pretty freely. That was a different experience. I went to The Blaze and I worked for Glenn Beck, who I had to end up getting in a lawsuit with because he tried to fire me for saying I was pro-choice when I went on The View. So it's been a different experience at those other networks. There's a lot that I've been through there. Fox, to me, is a completely different.
However, Hostin wasn't finished. For her, this wasn't just about winning an argument. It was about making a statement. She doubled down, accusing Lahren of hypocrisy, of benefiting from a system she now sought to deny to others. Hostin retorted that Lahren's family didn't assimilate the way she thinks immigrants should today, and that Lahren didn't even know her own history. The audience gasped. It wasn't just the words, it was the way they were delivered, the deliberate attempt to paint Lahren as a fraud on live television. The tension was palpable, the kind of moment that makes you hold your breath without realizing it. And just like that, a debate about policy had morphed into a full-blown ancestry smackdown, with both women standing their ground in a clash that felt less like a discussion and more like a battle for ideological supremacy.
Which, by the way, how annoying is The View getting? God, they're insufferable, that lot, aren't they? It's just a side effect.
Social media exploded within minutes. Clips of the exchange flooded Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, each one racking up millions of views, as hashtags like The View Clash Sunny and Ancestrygate began trending worldwide. Fans of the show were divided, with some praising Hostin for exposing Lahren and others accusing her of crossing a line that should never be crossed. One user tweeted that this wasn't journalism, but a personal vendetta disguised as a debate, while another declared that Sunny Hostin had just said what everyone had been thinking.
Tomi, what do you think of the president's trade policy?
Listen, this is the art of the deal at its best, and I understand that there was some volatility on Wall Street, and that's understandable, and I don't ever want to downplay anybody's concerns when it comes to their finances, their 401k, their retirement. I completely understand the anxiety there, but what President Trump has said, and I believe, is this is less about Wall Street and more about Main Street.
But the outrage didn't stop there. Prominent figures from both sides of the political spectrum weighed in, each adding their own layer of complexity to an already tangled web. Conservative pundits were quick to defend Lahren, accusing Hostin of engaging in identity politics and using ancestry as a weapon. This is a new low, even for daytime television, one right-wing commentator said during a segment on Fox News. Sunny Hostin didn't just attack Tomi's views, she attacked her family, her heritage. That's not debate. That's bullying. Meanwhile, voices from the left rallied around Hostin, framing her comments as a necessary critique of Laren's policies. If Tomi Lahren wants to talk about merit, then she should be prepared to face the facts about her own family's history, a progressive activist tweeted. You can't preach about following the rules when your own ancestors didn't. But as the dust settled, or rather, as it began to swirl even more furiously, questions started to emerge about the ethics of Hostin's approach. Was it fair to weaponize someone's family history in a political debate? Did this cross the line from policy discussion into a deeply unsettling form of public shaming? And perhaps most importantly, what did this say about the state of political discourse in America? This wasn't the first time Lahren and Hostin had clashed, of course. Their feud was practically a subplot of The View itself, a recurring drama that kept viewers tuning in week after week. Lahren, the young conservative provocateur with a knack for going viral, had spent years building her brand as a fearless critic of liberal wokeness. Hostin, the seasoned legal analyst with a sharp wit and even sharper tongue, had made it her mission to hold Lahren accountable for what she saw as dangerous rhetoric.
But what are they out there for? I can't really figure it out when we're talking about the Democrat message just as a whole. I know that they hate Donald Trump. I know they hate Elon Musk. I know they hate Doge. I know they hate deporting illegal aliens. I know they want men and women's sports. I know that they don't want parents to have control over the pronouns used.
I don't think they want men and women's sports, but
Democrats don't want that?
Their battles were legendary, fiery exchanges that often left other co-hosts scrambling to regain control of the conversation. But this time felt different. This time, the stakes were higher, the blows more personal. And for many viewers, it was a stark reminder of just how polarized America had become, a microcosm of a nation where every debate seemed to devolve into a no-holds-barred fight to the finish. The ratings for that episode of The View were through the roof, of course. Controversy sells, and this was controversy at its finest, or its worst, depending on who you asked. But as the episode replayed in endless loops on cable news and social media, the fallout began to take on a life of its own. Fans and critics alike started digging deeper, not just into the exchange itself, but into the personal histories and political ideologies of both women. And what they found only added fuel to the fire.
And I've been criticizing them for 8 years for doing it, pointing out that it's not the job of the media to take sides.
For Lahren, the criticism focused on her history of controversial statements, from her infamous comparison of the Black Lives Matter movement to the KKK, to her vocal opposition to Obamacare despite benefiting from it through her parents' insurance plan. Critics accused her of hypocrisy, of being a provocateur who thrived on outrage while refusing to engage in meaningful dialogue. Tomi Lahren loves to dish it out, but the moment someone pushes back, she plays the victim, one commentator said during a panel discussion. Hostin, on the other hand, faced accusations of her own, accusations that would soon snowball into something far more serious. Critics accused her of using her platform irresponsibly, of turning The View into a battleground for personal vendettas, rather than a forum for thoughtful debate.
According to the documents, he knowingly provided fraudulent medical and other healthcare services, including arthroscopic surgeries.
And then there were the whispers, the rumors that began circulating in the days following the broadcast. Whispers that suggested Hostin's comments weren't just an off-the-cuff remark, but part of a calculated strategy. Whispers that hinted at deeper tensions within the cast of The View, tensions that had been simmering for months and were now threatening to boil over. As the public debated the ethics of Hostin's remarks and the implications for Lahren's credibility, a question began to loom over the entire spectacle. What happens when the line between personal and political becomes so blurred that it disappears altogether? What happens when a debate isn't just about ideas, but about tearing each other down piece by piece until there's nothing left? The answer, it seemed, was chaos. Pure, unfiltered chaos that left no one unscathed. Not Lahren, not Hostin, and certainly not the millions of viewers who found themselves caught in the crossfire. And as the story continued to unfold, it became clear that this was only the beginning. Something deeper was brewing beneath the surface, something that promised to take this already explosive conflict to a whole new level.
This is the largest RICO case ever filed in the state of New York. You guys wrap that around your brain. That's bigger than the mafia.
And just when it seemed like the chaos couldn't possibly escalate further, the storyline took a sharp, jaw-dropping turn that no one could have predicted. Sunny Hostin, already under fire for her incendiary comments and polarizing tactics, found herself thrust into the center of a scandal so explosive it threatened to unravel not only her carefully curated public persona, but also the very platform from which she launched her attacks. Her husband, Dry Emmanuel Hostin, a respected orthopedic surgeon, was suddenly making headlines of his own, and not for any groundbreaking medical achievements. The news broke like a thunderclap. The Hostin had been arrested on charges of insurance fraud. Yes, you heard that right, insurance fraud. The man who had long been touted by Sunny as a symbol of integrity and hard work, the man she frequently referenced to bolster her arguments on the show, was now accused of orchestrating a scheme that allegedly siphoned funds from an insurance company to the tune of millions. And just like that, the narrative around Sunny Hostin took a dramatic and very public nosedive.
Oh, he was scamming insurance companies from taxi drivers, Uber drivers, and Lyft drivers. He was performing unnecessary surgeries and then providing fraudulent medical services in exchange.
The allegations were nothing short of shocking. According to court documents, Hostin was accused of performing unnecessary medical procedures on patients involved in low-impact car accidents, racking up exorbitant bills and then funneling those claims through a network of shell companies and complicit clinics. The goal? To bleed the insurance company dry while disguising the fraudulent payouts as legitimate earnings. It was a sprawling operation, the kind of scheme that sounded more like the plot of a high-stakes crime drama than the daily dealings of someone married to one of daytime television's most prominent voices. But here's where things get even murkier. Almost immediately, whispers began circulating that Sunny herself might not be entirely innocent in all of this. Critics pounced on the idea that she, as a legal expert and someone who had made a career out of scrutinizing others, must have known something. After all, how could a woman so sharp, so perceptive, so acutely aware of the legal and ethical failings of others miss this? How could she not have noticed the red flags in her own home, the discrepancies in her husband's finances, the sudden influx of wealth that didn't quite add up?
So we know Sunny Hostin and her husband, Dr. Emmanuel Hostin, are preparing for a legal battle to fight accusations that he committed federal insurance fraud.
The theories practically wrote themselves. Some speculated that Sunny had turned a blind eye, choosing willful ignorance over the uncomfortable truth. Others were less charitable, suggesting that she might have been complicit, that her legal expertise could have been used to help navigate the murky waters of her husband's alleged schemes. And then there were those who believed this was all a carefully crafted smear campaign, a coordinated effort to take down one of the most outspoken voices on daytime TV. But regardless of where the truth lay, one thing was certain: Sunny Hostin was no longer just a commentator. She was now a headline. The timing couldn't have been worse. The View was already under intense scrutiny following the public fallout from Hostin's feud with Tomi Lahren. The network's executives were reportedly scrambling to manage the PR nightmare, trying to figure out how to address the growing backlash without alienating their core audience. And now, with this latest scandal, the pressure was mounting by the hour. Rumors began swirling that ABC was considering drastic measures, including the possibility of sidelining Hostin altogether, at least until the dust settled. But even that came with its own set of complications. Removing Sunny from the show would almost certainly ignite claims of censorship and bias, while keeping her on could risk further damaging the network's reputation. It was a lose-lose scenario, and everyone knew it.
And it's a very serious crime. In fact, it's one of the largest, if not the largest, RICO case in New York's history.
Behind the scenes, tensions were reportedly at an all-time high. Sources close to the production described a toxic atmosphere, with cast members divided over how to handle the situation. Some felt that Sunny deserved the benefit of the doubt, arguing that she shouldn't be held accountable for her husband's alleged actions. Others, however, were less sympathetic, privately expressing frustration over the way her personal drama was overshadowing the show's mission, and more importantly, its ratings. And then there were those who couldn't resist pointing out the irony of it all. That Sunny, the self-proclaimed moral compass of The View, now found herself ensnared in a scandal that called her own ethics into question. And let's not forget the viewers. The reactions from the audience were as polarized as you'd expect, with some rallying behind Sunny and others calling for her resignation. Social media became a battleground, with hashtags like Sunny Exposed and Justice for Sunny trending alongside each other. Fans of the show flooded comment sections with their opinions, some accusing Sunny of hypocrisy and others lamenting what they saw as a targeted attack against a strong, outspoken woman of color. The debates were heated, the emotions raw, and the stakes impossibly high.
Of Sunny Hostin on The View, Tom, basically implicating her husband in this type of a scheme.
But as the public dissected every detail of the scandal, another layer of intrigue began to emerge. Speculation about the future of The View itself started to dominate the conversation. Would the show survive this latest controversy? Could it withstand yet another blow to its credibility? Insiders hinted at major changes on the horizon, with whispers of potential cast shakeups and even a complete overhaul of the show's format. Some even suggested that the network might consider pulling the plug entirely, citing the growing perception that The View had become more of a liability than an asset. And as if that weren't enough, there were also rumors of internal power struggles, with certain cast members allegedly vying for more influence in the wake of Sunny's potential downfall. Names were dropped, alliances speculated upon, and motives questioned. It was the kind of behind-the-scenes drama that rivaled anything happening on camera, a soap opera within a soap opera, if you will.
And they're essentially saying that it's a money grab, and they're also going to countersue for millions of dollars, $5 million plus.
But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of all this was the unanswered questions. If the allegations against Hostin were true, how deep did the deception go? Was Sunny truly oblivious, or was she playing a much more calculated game than anyone realized? And what about the other defendants named in the lawsuit? Could they hold the key to unraveling the entire operation? Or would they close ranks to protect themselves? The possibilities were endless, and the implications staggering. As the scandal continued to unfold, it became clear that this was more than just a story about one family's legal troubles. It was a microcosm of the larger issues plaguing both the media landscape and society as a whole, issues of trust, accountability, and the ever-blurring line between personal and professional lives. And while Sunny Hostin may have been the face of this particular controversy, the ripple effects were bound to be felt far and wide. So what do you think? Is Sunny Hostin an innocent bystander caught in the crossfire, or is there more to this story than meets the eye? And what does this mean for The View? Will it weather the storm, or are we witnessing the beginning of the end for one of television's most iconic shows? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, stay tuned, because if there's one thing we've learned from this saga, it's that the drama is far from over. See you in the next one.